now we see chapter 4 through the end, Hosea being able to preach not just in an academic kind of way, not just with fire and brimstone, though he does, but also with real feeling. He is really reaching out to the people of God through now how he understands how God feels when we go astray, when we break covenant with him. So we're looking here in Hosea chapter 7. We actually left off in verse 1, and we're talking a lot of judgment language at this point. And so in chapter 7, verse 1, he says, "When I would heal Israel, then the iniquity of Ephraim is uncovered, and the evil deeds of Samaria. For they work falsehood, and thieves enter in, raiders ransack outside." What we said at our conclusion last week with all this, God has reached out for his people time and time again. Of course, he doesn't just leave them out to dry. And in reaching out to some of his people, the others turn away and go to sin. And then he reaches out to the others, and the others turn away and go to sin. It's like a sickness. It's like a cancer that won't go away. When God heals one, the others get sick, and so on and so forth. Not because they can't help it, but because they choose the sin, they choose the sickness. So the new part we're picking up in is verse 2. He says, "They do not say to their hearts that I remember all their evil. Now their deeds are all around them. They are before my face." In short, what God is saying here in verse 2 is, I see you. I see your sin. It's not hidden. It's on full display. And even they're not even trying to hide it, but they just are bold in what they're doing. But you know, Amos chapter 5, verse 12 says something similar. Remember how Hosea and Amos are a bit of contemporary. Amos ends and Hosea picks up the baton. And Amos says in chapter 5, verse 12, "I know how many are your transgressions and how great are your sins." There's a lot of people in the world that think they can get away with little bad things, right? You know, big bad things, we probably get caught. But all the little stuff, yeah, no one really sees, no one really knows, no one really cares. But God looks at the little things just as he looks at the big things. Nothing is hidden from him. It's all equal in his eyes. And you know, the reason they fail to recognize this, the reason they fail to recognize the sin and the problem, because see, verse 2, he says, "They do not say to their hearts that I remember all their evil." It's as if they are forgetting these things. It's as if, and he's going to go on to make that point here in just a second, but it's as if they are ignoring these things, and they fail to recognize that they're so deep in corruption, so deep in sin, because even though it's all around them, as it says, or your version might say engulfs them or besets them. In verse 2, whenever he says at the end, "Now their deeds are all around them. They are before my face." Now it's become a problem for them, and they didn't realize how deep in it they are. So here's our first question for this morning. And by the way, what we're studying with this is the 7 points that I have found, 7 steps towards destruction and judgment. And this 4th one is worldliness. That's what this chapter is going to cover, how worldly they are. So what are some of the subtle signs that a person may be drifting towards spiritual numbness, spiritual blindness? And what I mean by that is, what's it look like when someone is not even paying attention that they are getting deeper in sin or closer to sin? Does that happen, do you think, without people realizing it? How does that look like? How can you tell if that's taking place in your own life or someone else's? You become callous to it, okay? And what? And you don't care. So it might be intentional, right? You just don't care, okay? What else? Yeah, lack of coming to church, lack of being where God's word is proclaimed, God's people are good people are supposed to be, right? Right place, right relationships, right things. Yeah? What else? It just becomes habit? It's just who you are. Yeah, it's just your life. It just is what it is, right? And that's what the point that they have gotten to is this is who they are. They're not even trying to hide it. They don't think anything's wrong with it. They don't think they should be anything different. They're not trying to be anything different. And so they've become so numb and callous to God, as y'all have said. They're not doing the things God wants them to do. Look at verse 4 through 10 in Hosea chapter 7. Hosea 7, verse 4. We'll look at verse 4 through 7 first. They are all adulterers. And that makes sense when we take into account what went through with Hosea and Gomer, right? They are all adulterers. They've broken covenant in a significant and hurtful way to God. Now, I think that this section right here is very, for lack of a better word, cool, interesting, just the symbolism in the picture, because it's one of those, when I read through it first, I'm like, what in the world are you talking about, God? But I think I have at least somewhat of a handle on it. He says, like an oven heated by the baker, who ceases to stir up the fire, from the kneading of the dough until it is leavened. On the day of our king, the princes became sick with the heat of wine. He stretched out his hand with scoffers, for their hearts are like an oven. Notice how he's talking about an oven and a baker, right? Their hearts are like an oven. As they draw near in their plotting, their anger smolders all night. In their mourning, it burns like a flaming fire. All of them are hot like an oven, and they devour their judges. All their kings have fallen. None of them calls on me. So the symbolism it's like a picture of a picture. Burning like an oven that needs no stoking in the morning. He's saying that they are like an oven that is hot all night long. Now, of course, we have, easy to use ovens. We set the button, we forget it, right? This is like a campfire type of oven, or this is obviously old ovens that you have to stoke, add the coals to, get it blowing, all that kind of stuff. That's being burnt all night in passion, waiting for the next day. It's not doing anything, it's just burning, ready to go the next morning. In verse 6, when he talks about they draw near in their plotting, their anger smolders all night, he's talking about how at first opportunity it flames up. Their hearts are hot like an oven. For what is the question? And what would you say? What are they ready for? Sin, worldly activities. What else? Not God, right? Unfortunately. What, just, survival of the fittest, pleasure for pleasure's sake, whatever it is of that day. But here's the thing, they are planning this. They are waiting to sin. They are excited about what is going to take place. Verse 7, when he's talking there, he's saying the heat of their sin has consumed their leaders. No one calls on God. So they have corrupted the leaders, or the leaders have just joined in and they're part of it. So there's no good in the leadership. There's no good in the middleman. There's no good anywhere at all. What I would say within this is premeditated sin. This is, I can't wait to get back to it. I'm thinking about it. I want to do it. And so a question that came to my mind is premeditated sin different than accidental sin or sin on a whim? Now, accidental sin, kind of on a whim, you stub your toe, you say a curse word, right? Didn't mean to do it, terrible, shouldn't do it, repent, come back. But premeditated sin, planning on it, I'm going to do this thing, I want to do this thing, I'm going to fulfill it, I'm going to find a way to fulfill my desire for this. Is there a difference?
Well, yeah, there's a difference.
Okay.
You can get out here and be in a situation where something happens to you of a sudden that ain't supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll say something or you'll do something
Yeah.
without thinking of it.
Like a reaction, yeah.
But the other one is a presumptuous sin where the mess. If it ain't a presumptuous, it's close to it.
Yeah.
God see it different.
Well, and that's also part of my question. Does God see the two differently, do you think?
In the Old Testament, there was no sacrifice for intentional sin.
Wow. There was for all these others, and even the ones that they didn't know that they were doing, because the priests were offering for them, right? But the premeditated ones, wow, yeah. So there's a difference in God's eye. There's a difference, should be a difference to us.
But some people think that verse 7, which says they devour their rulers,
Mm-hmm.
is actually their assassination attempt.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, the last 6 rulers of Israel, 4 of them were assassinated
Yeah.
in 2 Kings 15. So they
We're even talking premeditated murder, like we're going to do away with these guys for sure. Pretty evil that it's just chaos. That's what sin brings, is chaos, right? And so, a follow-up question, how can we catch and correct sinful thoughts before they ignite into action? Because here, their hearts are burning for it all night long, and that's not a place we want to be, right? That's not something we want to desire. We want to desire goodness. When the idea or the opportunity or the desire to sin for one reason or another comes into our hearts and minds, how do we handle it? How should we handle it? I mean, it's easy to say don't do it, right? But how do you get to the point of not doing what is natural to our flesh? Yes, sir.
James talks about that a little bit. He talks about the progression of sin.
And
You want to change your sins, change your desires.
yeah, are you talking about James chapter 1,
Yeah, James chapter 1,
verse 14?
14.
He says, "But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust." Watch the progression. If you're reading here in James 1:14, there's a progression of how this takes place. "But each one is tempted when he's carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully mature, it brings forth death." So what would you say on top of that?
Not to oversimplify, because I think there's a time where you have to say no
Right.
in the moment, but further upstream from that, if you change your desires, you do the things that allow the Word of God to dwell in you, you're focused on those things that God wants you to focus on, then those temptations should be minimized.
Minimized, yeah. Temptation's still there, but overcome. You can overcome, yeah.
But you go back to Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had it made up in their mind they were not going to sin. Whatever was put in their front of them, if it meant death, it meant death. They were not going to sin, give into it.
That's a pretty good way to think about it. Before the sin gets there, pre-plan, not going to sin.
It needs to be thought about before.
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom and practicality in that for sure. Appreciate you guys. Here they are certainly passionate about what they're doing, but I'd say beyond passion. I'd say obsessive. They are obsessing over these things. It is their full heart's desire, their full way that they bend their life around it. But look at verse 8. "Ephraim," so again, the northern kingdom, Israel and Ephraim, "mixes himself with the peoples." Now, keep in mind the oven and the cake kind of symbolism. That's what we're talking about, kneading and mixing together. "Ephraim mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim has become a cake, not turned." So mixing and playing the harlot and with foreign nations instead of being faithful to God. It's not even worth asking. I know every one of us have cooked pancakes before on a griddle, right? Or something on a griddle. What happens when you just leave it on one side and you don't turn it? Really, really burnt on one side, raw on the other side. And in our house, those type of pancakes, they go in the trash, right? But here he's making this symbolism to show that they are both burned and they are both raw. I wouldn't even say that this is lukewarm. I'd say that this is something else altogether. And so the thing about what he's saying here is they are burnt with the sin, but they are raw upwards toward God. So they are unmixed, uncooked in the right way, undesirable towards God in the way that they should be. And then this half-burnt, half-wrought thing is good for nothing except for the trash, right? Except to be done away with. And that's what God is saying is going to happen. Verse 9. "Strangers devour his power, yet he does not know it. Gray hairs also are sprinkled on him, yet he does not know it. So the pride of Israel answers against him. Yet they have not returned to Yahweh their God, nor have they sought him for all of this." Israel and Ephraim, they are sapped of their strength. They are zapped of their beauty because of their promiscuous activity, because of all the things that that made them beautiful when they got to the promised land and when they were faithful to God, the thing that made them bright, shining examples in the world, they're no longer doing any of that. And if they're doing it, some are doing it, but they're doing it just to buy off God. They're doing it just to check the box, but they're still doing everything else equal to God, which is wrong, right? And so because of this, I started to think with this symbolism that zapped of their beauty, zapped of their strength, it's a reminder again of Gomer chapter 2, when she left Hosea, and it got to the point that she played the harlot so much. This is adult Bible class, okay? She got to the point where she played the harlot so much, nobody even wanted to pay her for that anymore. She was way overused and just way done in and way just horrendous because of the activities, that then she was only good to be sold as a common slave. To which God told Hosea, do you remember what to do? What he told him to do? Go pay for her. Go buy her back. And he does. So like Gomer, the beauty had faded. And doesn't want to admit it, or probably more likely, he says, does not even notice it. And soon will be sold off into slavery like Israel will be to the Assyrians. Their strength had faded, not even noticed. So here's the next question. Spiritually, how does that happen to someone? What are the warning signs that we're drifting from God's strength and not even aware? Slightly similar to a former question, but yeah. Again, James chapter 1, verse 21 through 23, right? Yeah. You got to, take a self-evaluation. It's like getting up for church. You're going to make sure you look all right for church, right? And whenever you look in the mirror and you see a speck or a blemish or something, you're not just going to leave it and walk off. But that's what he says the foolish man does. Put your glasses on.
Not what I was.
Yes, but spiritually speaking, well, I think we know what we're getting at for sure here. So some personal pondering for you, though, on this subject. Who in your life do you trust to tell you the truth when you're slipping? And do you have the heart and the humility to accept it? That's for you to chew on, for each of us to chew on. But here Gomer and Israel, they have been begged and begged and begged by their husband, Hosea, and God, Hosea being the stand-in, begged by those that are in a covenant relationship with them to come back and come back. But one of the problems that Israel has experienced at this point is pride. And so, verse 10, as it says, that's verse 11. Verse 10, so the pride of Israel answers against him. It keeps somebody from turning and being repentant toward God. The half-baked cake, the cake not turned over, speaks of no good and nauseating food. It's scorched by the bottom with spiritual adultery and sinful living, while the raw top is uncooked in its relationship to God. And so verse 11, like a silly dove, he says, so Ephraim has become like a silly dove without a heart of wisdom. They call to Egypt and they go to Assyria. What's the problem with them calling to Egypt and going to Assyria? Partnering what? With the wrong people, Robbie? They're leaving God out of it completely, right? And so instead of trusting in God's providence and care, they're making earthly treaties and relying on them for material things. There's the problem, right? For them especially. And so this picture of a silly dove, it's like one that's unaware of the traps that are laid around it to snare it and to catch it. And he's saying that's how you're acting, like with a childlike foolishness. Even though I've raised you up, you should be more mature. You should be more understanding by now. You should understand that the other nations are going to be the ones that are going to ensnare you, that are cause you to lose all your strength. But they refuse to see that because they see the immediate blessings in their immediate future. Not blessings, their immediate building up of wealth and presumed safety and things that they want in this world. But you look at verse 15 and 16. We are going to have to run just a little bit today. Although I disciplined and strengthened their arms, yet they devise evil against me. Saying, I've taken care of them, but yet they've turned against me. Verse 16. They turn, but not upward. They're like a deceitful bow. Their princes will fall by the sword because of the indignation of their tongue. This will be their scoffing in the land of Egypt. They're like a faulty or a deceitful bow. Have you ever seen one of those videos or seen someone that draws back a bow and it just snaps? And it's kind of funny, but I know it's painful if it does it just right, especially. And he's saying they're like one of these, meaning it looked like it could work when it's picked up and it's ready to go, but it falls apart when it's used, and so it is, in my word, unreliable. Can't be counted on. Israel can no longer be relied on to do the right thing, to do the faithful thing. And so, in what ways, going through some of the questions I have written down, what ways do we risk becoming people who look godly outward, who look the part almost, but fail to follow through? And how can we become instruments that God can rely on instead? First part, though, let's handle the first part. How do we risk becoming people who look godly, who look the part, but we fail to follow through like a broken bow? Yeah, we go through the motions. We show up, sit in my pew, but that's it, right? That's the depth. The depth is literally physically right here. And then it doesn't go to the heart. It doesn't even really go to the brain, yeah? Any other way y'all, or point y'all might make? Yes, sir.
I think we can tie that back to verse 9 also.
Mm-hmm.
A warning sign that we're drifting away also, and that's our prayer life.
Our prayer life?
Individual prayer life.
Yeah. How are you going to go through life and be useful to God and not talk to God? Seems kind of silly, huh? Like a silly dove. Yes, sir.
I think, Josh, we all fall prey to being human.
Being what?
Human.
Human.
And, we know we're weak and frail without God. And I like to think of it in terms of keeping God in the forefront of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking with Him every second of the day. He never leaves me.
Yeah.
But when we're together, we're strengthening one another. When we're in functions with each other, we're strengthening one another,
Yeah.
edifying one another. But when we get into the world, we forget sometimes that He should be first and foremost in our thoughts
Mm-hmm.
always as we walk.
It's easy when we're in the atmosphere.
This building,
Yeah.
he doesn't stay here.
Yeah.
He goes with us everywhere we go.
It's easy when we're in the right atmosphere, you're saying, but out there we got to be just as intentional, if not more. Okay. So we're already answering the how do we become instruments God can rely on. Max said a dedicated prayer life. You're saying intentionality. But what else? If you were to give more everyday details or broad details, how would you say we can become instruments God can rely on? Be useful for God. Reliable. Mm-hmm. How do you prove to your parents, to your boss, to whoever that you are someone that can be relied on? By your works, yeah. Doing your job, right? Just when you clock in at 9 a.m. and no more the rest of that? No, repetitiveness, right? You have proven that I ain't got to worry about this guy. I know that they're going to do their job versus the few that you kind of have to keep your eye on and kind of prod a little bit. And that's okay. Every one of us needs some prodding sometimes, right? We'd be foolish to say that we don't. But to be repetitive, to form the habits, to be trained, to have that lifestyle, not just in this context, right? To do these things that we do this morning, but to do them away from here. And to have the same mindset and the same desire away from here, right? Okay. Anything else before we move on? Yeah. 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 It's even hurtful when you find out you can't count on someone like you thought you could, right? Yeah. But we're looking for godly men, not looking for, we are looking for, but we were striving to be godly men and women that can be counted on. You're right.
In that verse 16, it picks up again. It seems like it does it. So many of the prophets that there's condemnation for the leadership because they were not holding the people accountable to what
Mm-hmm.
they knew they were supposed to be accountable for. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that we have to acknowledge even today, how thankful we are. We have leaders. God set the church up
Mm-hmm.
the way he did so that we have people who hold us accountable. We do not like that. We don't want anybody coming and saying, what are you doing, kind of thing. And yet, out of love, they do that because they don't want to see us fall away. So I think, we have to acknowledge we need our elders and our deacons teachers to all, it takes all of us together to stay on that path.
You're right.
Because the world is ever around us, as we all know, and we are tempted.
Yeah. And God does often start with speaking to the leaders and saying, if this doesn't get right, it's not impossible for the people, but boy, this needs to be right. Brian?
I'm reminded also of what Jesus focused a lot with the Pharisees on. He told them on the outside to flake the cut, or shiny, but on the inside you're rotten.
Mm.
Because they weren't bearing the fruit that they needed to bear.
Yeah.
And so we've got to make sure that we're bearing good fruit, not only in this building when we're together worshiping, but also in the world.
Yeah. And so to do that and to do what Miss Beth had said, I thought about one of my favorite verses, as you guys know, from 2 Timothy 4:2, where he says, preach the word, be instant in season and out of season. And he says, reprove, rebuke, and exhort. And when you think about those words, reprove, rebuke, and exhort, you have 2/3 negative and 1/3 positive. And teachers, preachers, elders typically don't find joy in doing the negative, right? And some steer away from it because they don't like confrontation, but it's absolutely necessary and needed to be done. How? By the word. And then he goes on to say, with great patience and teaching. And so we're talking about the whole counsel of God has to be taught, and in terms of what it is, but then taught in how to be that, how to do that. And so sometimes when I'm thinking of these questions, not sometimes, I'm trying to get us to think a little bit more in how to. I know we kind of have the typical, yes, sin's bad, God good, answers, right? But how we play that out, Joe?
I love Hebrews 12, Josh, because it addresses that very thing about God, how he rebukes us. Why does he rebuke us? Because he loves us.
Yeah.
And when we rebuke our brothers and sisters or anyone, are we doing it in the right way?
Right.
Are we doing it out of love and care? Or are we doing it just to hold over something?
Yeah, there is the right manner to do it.
Absolutely.
One of the requirements of elder is to be gentle. That'll be next week for the Spirit as well. So it's actually a big thing. And how I would say gentle, as I'm sitting here thinking about it a week or two ahead of time, is pressure, but the right pressure. Gentle doesn't mean no pressure, but it means the right pressure. And so it takes someone wise and shrewd to be able to say, I don't like the word shrewd, it takes someone wise to be able to know how to reprove, rebuke, and exhort all these things with the right pressure, with the right amount of emphasis. So let's go back to Hosea. We're going to go over chapter 9 now. We just looked at chapter 7. We're going to chapter 9. Hosea 8 is a lot more similar of the same, of things that we have studied all the way through up to this point. He does say a few extra things, but for time's sake, let's look at chapter 9. We looked a little bit at chapter 9 before. This is step 5, so we've gone from worldliness, chapter 7. Now, chapter 9, we're going to see their corruption, their worldliness, their tie with the world, being mixed with the world, looking like the world, finding success in the way the world finds success has led to corruption. Chapter 9, verse 1. Do not be glad, O Israel, with rejoicing like the peoples, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your God. You have loved harlots' earnings on every threshing floor. Is everybody out there being a prostitute, literally? No. What he's saying here is you rejecting God and going to all these other things, that's you playing the harlot here. And yet, what they have found is monetary success. They have found, abundance in doing these things. And so God is warning them, verse 1, against rejoicing, saying, they would have interpreted these periods of good gain as a sign of securing blessing or doing right? Because people's thought in the world typically is that if you have abundance, that means you're doing good things. Why would I have all this good if what I'm doing is wrong? Maybe that's how a lot of people think today as well. But he says, don't rejoice in these because this is sinful adultery, prostitution, as he calls it. Now, I'm going to ask this question, and I need everyone to understand the way that I'm asking this. And I put it up there just to make sure that we're clear. Can comfort and prosperity actually be spiritual dangers? I'm not asking, is comfort and prosperity wrong? Because it's not. Abraham had a lot. He was faithful. Job had a lot. He was faithful and good. But can having prosperity and comfort lead to danger if not careful? And if so, how? Okay. End up putting your trust in that, right? It's worked so far. Yeah. He what? Oh, Deuteronomy 8. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Forget where our blessings come from or who allows them. Yeah. And who has every right to take them away as well.
When you read David's reign, about David's reign, when he took over as king, the first 20 years he's out fighting battles. He's out doing things. He's following God. He's trusting in God. And when it says that when he should have been out in battle, he was walking along the castle wall.
Mm-hmm.
Got too comfortable.
And that's when he saw Bathsheba, right? When he should have been out doing the same things, he was too comfortable back home. Yeah. Okay, good. Other thoughts?
You have a desire to want more comfort, more.
Yeah. A little is good. More must be better. Yeah. So there's a way to evaluate then when is and what is enough, right? Okay. Other thoughts? Again, Derek actually said something at men's breakfast. Do you remember what you said about the top 1%? If you earn over $30,000, you're in the top 1% wealthiest in the world. Hello. That's all of us, I'm pretty sure. I mean, except for the teens maybe, but most everybody in America, right? And so comfort in that way, we're all in danger of it. I'm not just talking about those who own businesses and do good for themselves, things of that nature. But all of us in our context, in our cultural setting, have this danger of becoming too reliant on what has made us comfortable instead of God, who's behind the scenes taking care of everything in a spiritual, prosperous way. So, Joe, do you have something?
I think about the Apostle Paul when he talks about he's had everything or plenty, and then he's had nothing. And he's had, the comforts, and he's been in jail.
Yeah.
And he's had every experience you can have from being without anything to having everything.
Yeah.
That God, and it's remembering that it comes from God and not from our own efforts.
Well, and he says the contentment is just having Jesus himself. He says that's where the contentment actually is. Yeah, it's mind, the heart. It's when I got him, that's enough, And so if I have a lot, I'm going to be faithful with it. If I have a little, I'm going to be faithful with everything I do have, even if it's just me, myself, and I. So, yeah. All right, well, other thoughts or anything? Okay, let's go on to verse 2 through 5. Here comes judgment, is how I put this outline. Threshing floor and winepress will not feed them. What time is it? It's 14:28. Who has the time? We got 3 minutes. Whatever 14:28 is, it ain't right. Verse 2 through 5. Threshing floor and winepress will not feed them, and the new wine will deceive them. They will not remain in the land of Yahweh, but Ephraim will return to Egypt, and in Assyria they will eat unclean food. They do not pour out drink offerings of wine to Yahweh. Their sacrifices will not be pleasing to him. Their bread will be like mourner's bread. All who eat of it will be defiled, for their bread will be for themselves alone. It will not enter into the house of Yahweh. So, in this section, we're talking about they're going to lose their land, lose their blessings. They're going to go into exile. That's what we're talking about here with Egypt. Egypt in the Old Testament and in the New at times, it is used in symbolism. It's a referral to bondage and slavery and exile. And so he's using this imagery. They had forgotten that they were first and foremost in God's land, that they were guests here. And then now they're going to be taken into exile because they weren't faithful to God. They'll have no ability when they're in captivity to worship God properly, like with the temple and everything, since they'll be away from the land of God, away from the temple of God. And so their bread is not going to be like the bread that's inside the temple, but it's going to be mourner's bread, mourning their loss and realize how good they actually had it. What he's asking, verse 5, what will you do on the days of the appointed festival, on the day of the feast of Yahweh? What will you do on the days that you were supposed to celebrate and worship? When you're away from God in those days, you're going to mourn your loss and realize how good you actually had it. They will learn, and this is a good spot to land as we get ready to worship. They will learn what many of us need to make sure that we learn for the first time or remember, that worshiping God is a privilege and a good responsibility that we have. It's not a check off the box, I have to do this. It's something, as David Mays, if he were here, would say you get to do. But it really is true. It is a benefit for us, as well as glorifying to God. So, with that, Michael, would you close us in prayer?